what does thriving really mean? Does it just mean like eating well and working out and having energy to be busy? Or does it mean literally creating what you want in your life and experiencing the joy in that? It's more of a practice. It's a check-in. It's a constant check-in. Am I going into those old patterns of behavior, of busyness, and am I jumping back over to those and really starting to ask the question, why? Why do I need to do this? I'm wanting to get to the place where I'm doing things more out of joy, because I felt like most of my life I was doing things through obligation.
Allison, welcome.
Thank you, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We've been looking forward to this. We're talking about thriving today, but not just thriving, finally thriving. This is probably on everyone's mind in some way, this concept of thriving. And many people, when they go throughout planet Earth, myself included, we go through this, I guess you could say, strenuous learning curve on learning how to thrive. And a lot of it comes, it's paradoxical. A lot of it comes from like what we learned from our dad and our mom. But the beauty of this work, and I'm going to give you a chance to share with people, what you do, who you are in the world, is that when I was reading your book in preparation for this interview, which I so enjoyed, I was telling you, I was on the bike this morning, I was flipping through part 3, multidimensional self, which we're going to go into the aspects of that. But I noticed something really special on the first page. And you dedicated this book to your dad. And he taught you that there is really life after death. You were inspired to write this book, actually, the day of your father's funeral, and you were there when he transitioned. So you said in your book, I witnessed my dad's consciousness moving out of his body and into a different dimension of reality, and it was life-changing. Let's start there, because that really knocked me back when I read it. And just tell people how the book even came to be from that day and what you wrote about your dad.
Yes. So I was referring also to why I put that in the book, and I realized that so many people are really interested in this, and I was very happy that I put it in there, because I think we're all really curious about what happens to our energy after this physical reality. Of course we are, but rarely do people talk about the experiences they have when they're with someone when they pass. So I thought that would be great to put in there, because it was a huge catalyst for what happened afterwards with the book itself. And so that was why I decided to put that in there. And most of my life, like I was mentioning, is that my mission has been to really start to put the pieces of the puzzle together between how the physical and the energetic interplay. So our energetic body and our physical body. And so we're so focused, especially in health and fitness, on our physical body. And we kind of stop there, the buck stops there, but there's so much more that we're missing as it relates to that. And that's what I was seeing, because I was experiencing this whole other spiritual realm as I worked with coaches like Hannah Beer and Roseanne Grace, and I'm seeing all these things translate into the physical. And I'm saying to myself, well, why aren't we acknowledging those parts of ourselves and how that relates to the physical and how it manifests in the physical? Because we're totally discounting that. And most times people are saying, oh, that's so woo-woo. But the reality of it is it's real, because we feel it, and we can, sometimes we can visualize it. And so let's acknowledge this other part of ourselves that really is our true essence. It goes beyond the body, it goes beyond the mind, and transcends this physical reality, which I think is really important.
Well, what is reality anyways? We have a shared reality in relationships. I have a reality based on my unique set of circumstances that I learned, whether it's this lifetime or genetics or great grandparents. There's so many layers, Allison, to what really gives us, quote, reality. But one thing I loved most in the book is you have a fitness background, and we share that. I was a fitness professional for 10 years. And so I just came across people that would come in and they would get a good workout and they would sweat and they would feel good. Little did I know, they really just wanted someone to care and they wanted someone to be there to connect. And this is what you write about in Finally Thriving, with their subtle energy body. Because you write about this in the book, there's two bodies. There's this physical meat suit that we live in with like the meat radio, the brain, where we send and receive signals, with the redox system and our digestive tract and everything else. And then there's the subtle energy body. Can you go into these two bodies? Because I've heard people describe it before, but I love the way you put it in the book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was important for people to connect with that part of themselves, and that's why I put it in the book. And so I shared mostly how I connect with it on a personal level and how I help my clients connect with their energetic, subtle bodies too. I learned through a lot of teachers, one being Paul Chek, through the years, that there are more than one type of energetic body. But rather than making things too complicated, I just decided to call it the subtle energetic body, because that's what people can initially connect with. And then if they want to go further and learn more about all the other ones, they can. But generally, your subtle energetic body is how you feel. It's how you see through your third eye. So your ajna chakra, and sometimes we have repressed certain emotions or feelings or something related to our intuition in our life. And that also suppresses the feeling of the connection that you have with your subtle energetic body. So what I wanted to do in the book is to help people reconnect with that by giving them really practical exercises to do that. It's not complicated. And the thing is about life, this is something I thought about this morning, is we're already spiritual beings. We're in these vehicles, these bodies, and being in a body is also a spiritual experience. So everything we do is a spiritual experience, but yet we categorize it as looking a certain way or being in a certain environment. But really, your spiritual experience is every moment of your life. And the best way to really begin to connect with that is to learn how to be present with it in every moment of your life. And that's true. That ends your suffering, really. And it's just true peace and calm and just knowing, an inner knowing for yourself that everything's going to be okay. And so if you can find that presence in every moment of your life, then that's truly liberating, in my opinion. So I wanted to share in a very practical, simple way how we can begin this process of being present with ourselves and being more in the now and enjoying that. So through feeling what you feel on an individual basis, what your energy body feels like to you, and starting to practice that through different exercises that I give in the book. And all of them are accessible to anybody. Anybody could do it. It's just a matter of you just starting to focus on those things and practice and get consistent with it, right?
Mm-hmm. I can't help but feel when I read the book, and especially this morning when I was just looking at that first passage about your dad, sometimes we all get off the path, but we're never actually lost. The path might deviate, the spiritual growth path, the path of subtle energy growth, the path of physical growth. And you wrote this book before anyone woke up for 6 months. You had this really cosmic upload, cosmic download. And I hate on that phrase, but like you actually had it. And every single morning, at the top of the morning, you would sit and write, what is the connection you feel in your heart from being there to actually feel and see your father transition? And how did that fuel you getting up every single morning? To me, that feels like it was a subtle energy body connection and really didn't have too much to do with the physical.
No, you're exactly right. That is so true. I experienced a slowing down of time when my dad passed. I got the opportunity to be there with him. My sister and I were both there with him when he was on the respirator. And then at some point, I think it was about 3 days later, we found out that he had what's called agnostic brain damage. So that means the whole entire brain is damaged from his lack of oxygen to the brain from his heart attack. And so once we found that out, the neurologist said, okay, it's time to call in palliative care and go ahead and transition him. And so I was the one that was in charge of making the call on that. And so I did. And once I did, we sat there with him. We thought it was going to take a long time. We weren't sure how long it was going to take. They said it could take up to 15 minutes or to an hour. Who knows, And so, we sit there with him. We say a few things to him, and then we're crying. And
do you think he heard you?
Well, this is the thing. Like he all of a sudden stops breathing, and then we really start crying. We're like, oh my God, he's gone. And then he wakes up again and starts breathing, and we're like, oh my, it's his last practical joke, because he was kind of a practical joker. And we start laughing, so it takes kind of the stress off the situation, and then I think he kind of stuck around because there was more to say. Like we needed to say what was unsaid. And once we each did that, then he passed right after that. And so I felt like, he was listening. I could tell that I could feel his presence in the room. There was an interesting thing that happened. I walked in. So the situation was that he was at the hospital getting a hip replacement surgery, and he was 85. And I thought it was pretty risky, but it's something he really wanted to do because he wanted to continue playing golf. And so, but he had a pacemaker and a heart condition. So, his greatest fear was getting a blood clot. And so I believe that's what actually ended up happening and how he ended up with a heart attack. But I walked in about 2 minutes before he had the heart attack to go pick him up at the hospital because he had come out of the surgery fine. And it was the day after he was supposed to be released that, that I was coming in to pick him up. We were getting ready to go. We were going to get ready to go and home and everything. He was really excited. But he ended up having a heart attack and going to ICU for 3 days. And I just remember the days before that, talking to him at his house, and he was giving me all this information, just in a very casual conversation, like important information about like if he was to pass or what I needed to look for, where this, certain, where the information was for all of his, safety deposit box or all the financial stuff. And I was just thinking, okay, and he was just reminding me of all these things in a casual conversation. And then he was also sharing some stories with me of his past and how, he kind of came to be what he is now, and when he started at his job, and all these stories that I hadn't heard him talk about before. And it was really interesting. And he seemed probably more calm in his life than I've ever seen him. And so looking back on it, I feel like he knew that the time was coming. Like part of him knew this. It was his time. And so that was really interesting to see too. So if I look back on the entire process, we all we prepare for this. It's a transition, just like being born, right? And so my sister and I were with him, and we helped him on that transition by giving him parting words and closure there to go ahead and step into the next dimension of reality that he was going into. And soon after, I had dreams with him in it, with him. Like there was one dream where he was on a boat with a Sherpa and like guiding him to the next place. It was really interesting. So I've had a lot of dreams like that since, with him in different realities, which has been really interesting. He's shown me all kinds of stuff. So it opened me up. It opened my third eye up big times. And that's what allowed the download to come through. During his funeral, I got this message about writing this book. And I'd always wanted to write a book, but I always thought, oh my God, where would I start? I have all this information. I don't even know what to do with that. And what, topic I would really talk about. And the message was, we'll give you the information. It's going to flow right through. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm going to start writing every morning. And I just started writing. It just became the most enjoyable process to just get that out and just channel the whatever I wanted to write through every morning. It started out about 15 minutes and then it ended up an hour or two. And I had to stop myself to see clients because I was writing so much. I couldn't stop. And so in itself, it was a very healing process for me personally. Writing can be very powerful. And that's why I put journal exercises in the book too, because, sometimes when we don't realize the power of actually either voicing something or writing it out. And that is, in a sense, you letting go of that
there's
that
a huge catharsis that can happen from writing like that. I feel you so much right now. And as you were talking, I was like visualizing you waking up, and the fuel source of you writing this book after going through that. Really, it's a part of the hero's journey. I mean, it's a massive initiation to lose a parent or a spouse or a child or a brother or a sister or any family member. And I think about the way that we all kind of get hit and we course correct. So maybe there's a part of your soul calling, and I'm curious how you feel about this, that made you write this book. And it's no surprise it's called Finally Thriving, because I know you've gone through your own health journey, right? In helping others, the wounded healer, which is the archetype that so many of us fall into. But what is it that you know now from your third eye, from your own wisdom, that is part of your soul contract, part of your purpose here on earth, that was waiting in the wings, but then witnessing this transition of your father really made this come online? What was that course correction that you felt?
Yes. So it was a slowdown, the slowdown of someone in your life dying, like a parent. And it just makes there's something about losing that support in your life. That's like nothing I've ever experienced. It's, it really creates a huge void in a way. That's how I felt. And it brought me back to just, like, oh my God, how am I going to feel that support in my life, like that he provided, and there's also a deep gratitude for him being my dad and everything that he symbolized in my life. And so there was that. And so that slowdown for that couple of weeks after he passed was really big for me, because I'm so used to, one thing I did realize about myself is I was doing a lot of, I was busy out of a trauma response. I was, busyness was my trauma response. Instead of resolving my trauma, I was just filling my schedule up with busyness. And this is how I felt important as well.
How long was that going on?
My calendar up with clients. Like, I'm important because tons of people want to work with me. But what that does is it leaves no room for me. It leaves no room to prioritize myself. It doesn't leave any room for me to, to really explore the things that I want to do and the things that I want to create. So I saw a lot of people doing that. And when I slowed down, I was like, oh my God, the world is doing that, and we're all in this.
That's why I asked you, how long was it? Was it like 10 years, 20 years? It was quite some time that you were living out this trauma response, being in quote service, but being frenetically busy. I've fallen into that trap so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a thing. And it was something that I'm realizing that's happening again, like after the slowdown, after the pandemic and all of that, like everything slowed down. So this was 2 weeks prior to everything shutting down that I was experiencing my father's death. And then I literally experienced that on a mass scale in the world. We all experienced that together, which was tremendous. And it was like, wow. So I used that as an opportunity because I just experienced that with my dad passing, that slowdown, and how it just brought me to more sacredness in my life, appreciating like things that I wasn't appreciating before because I was so busy all the time, or I was trying to keep up with everybody else, or I was trying to market and figure out the marketing and all of these things. I was like, oh, I'm actually enjoying my life now. I'm like looking at the birds on my back porch and enjoying, just writing and just, enjoying my workout and going out, taking a hike and just starting to appreciate and enjoy my life, like every aspect of it, just slowing down, there's something so simple about that, but we're scared to do that because the concept of thriving, has been so overused. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to use it in the book, because it's so much more than what people think it is. It goes deeper than that, because our survival mechanisms are in the subconscious. So for example, busyness for me, it was an old story that I had from childhood about feeling like I'm important because I'm busy, but that's more identifying with what I do instead of what I'm being, like the being of me, the essence of me is not doing anything. The essence of me is just observing and appreciating. So what about that part? I wasn't even acknowledging that part within myself. And that was so important. And that's what brings me peace in my life. That's what brings me joy. And so I wasn't acknowledging that. So that was the thriving aspects. Like what does thriving really mean? Does it just mean like eating well and working out, and having energy to be busy? Or does it mean literally creating what you want in your life and experiencing the joy in that?
And what do you think it means now, based on the threshold, the massive threshold, the vacuum, as Alan Watts would call it, that you went through with the loss and the spaciousness that was created? I think you called it a void. What was created from that, and how did that impact your definition of thriving, to thrive?
Yeah. So now I look at it as it's more of a practice. It's a check-in. It's a constant check-in. Am I going into those old patterns of behavior, of busyness? And is that, am I jumping back over to those and really starting to ask the question, why? Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to be on this podcast? Why do I need to make this connection? Is it for the joy of it, or is it because I need to get some kind of need met within me?
Can both be present?
They can, absolutely. And there's no judgment like with it. It's just being aware of it. And for me personally, I'm wanting to get to the place where I'm doing things more out of joy, because I felt like most of my life I was doing things through obligation. And it just became a heavier burden on myself, where I didn't allow myself to do the things I really wanted to do creatively. And so I feel like at this point, for me, my thriving is expressing myself in a creative way, the way I just really desire to do that. And, it takes it. I still go back into old patterns.
Yes.
So
I remember before we started this podcast, I prayed and we sat in some stillness. And then right when I was done with the prayer, it was like, and let's have fun too, because they're both radically important. Like you and I, there's a kinship, because we've learned from a mentor, Paul. We've probably read similar books. I assume if you looked at my bookcase, you'd probably be like, oh yeah, I've read that one. But there's also there's an element of play that you talk about in the book. And I'm curious, because in part one, we're not even going to have time to get into part two. Part two is powerful. We're going to touch on part one, and then I'm going to go to the meat and the heart and soul of really what I wanted to chat with you about, which is listening to spirit. But just on a high level, 30,000 foot for part one, align your mind. The book is broken into the really cool, like wellness, choose your own wellness adventures. I love it. It reminds me of like a beautiful feminine lens on what Tim Ferriss tried to do with Tool of Titans, where he took a bunch of things and he was like, this is how you do it. And it was very masculine.
That's so funny. That's what I thought of too.
But you put a feminine lens on this, and actually it's really cool. If you're watching with us on YouTube, there's a beautiful, like almost like a Zen circle, like a beautiful paintbrush circle. Did you paint that? Is that yours?
No, actually, I described what I wanted, my vision for the cover, and answered some questions, and my designers made that, and they did an amazing job.
Cool. The reason I asked you that is,
and it's supposed to be a vortex of creativity,
yes,
and
imagination.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
In part one, and this is what I want to touch on, you talk about using your imagination muscle, and this is a beautiful quote: imagination is more important than intelligence. Just let that sit for a moment. We all try to get like the best certificates and qualifications, and we try to figure out the top 5 ways to interrelate to your partner. It's like, we're just ignoring the heart. We're ignoring imagination. Imagination is more important than intelligence. So from an imagination standpoint, like what have you seen blossom inside of yourself? And what can you share with our audience about how imagination applies to the mind, to aligning the mind, this muscle of imagination?
Yes, that was something I really struggled with in my early adult life. And I realize now that it was because I was repressing that part of myself earlier on in the hopes to fitting in and to try to conform into like a comfortable box that felt safe for me, you know. I'd not really been taught imagination and what the tool of imagination could do for you in that way until later in life when I started to learn more about the energy body and energy work. So, and so I'll share a couple things that will help people connect with this as well. But, I was, one thing I did, I've shared on a few podcasts, was I was in the HLC 3 years ago with Paul. And we were all doing this like art project, and he was just like, draw whatever comes to mind, you know, and I was like, I said to myself, oh my God, I don't know what to draw. I looked around, I was like, everybody's drawing, they're having fun, and I don't know what to do. I'm like stressing out here about this, you know, exercise is supposed to be fun, and I couldn't visualize anything. And then finally I did start drawing, and it was pretty cool. And I didn't give myself enough credit for that, for sure. And I look back on it, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Why didn't I think that was amazing? You know, because I had these high expectations of perfectionism on me, and that was really stifling my ability to think just so, you know, beyond the limits that I had put on myself. So imagination is a great tool for taking yourself out of the box of that limitation and then opening yourself up to more possibilities and learning how to receive that. So it just really helps to open you, because it's helpful to be open in a way that where you have good boundaries, so that you can, you know, see other perspectives, that you can have good relationships from that. You can also receive lots of abundance and those kinds of things, receive new ideas, you know. So it's good to open yourself up. But in the context of wellness, how I use this is for people to, and how I've used it with my clients, is to start to imagine the body that you'd like to create. So we tend to really focus more on all the things we need to fix in our body. And so the more I learned and saw this in clients, like the more they would focus on the things that they felt were broken, the more they'd get those kinds of things over and over again, right?
Over and over, and so like almost like a broken record, and they don't know why the music is playing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I said, wait, let's actually focus on where you want to go with this. What do you want your body to do? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? Let's start to visualize this, because this is an exercise. Before I even learned about this, when I was a gymnast, I would visualize the moves I wanted to do over and over and over again. And I would even if I couldn't visualize myself doing it, I'd visualize an Olympic gymnast doing that move until I could put myself in her place and start to visualize that. So it would work great. And I used it all the time because I didn't want to get hurt. So, so it worked beautifully. But then I forgot about it somewhere along the line when I became an adult. And
I think we all have that chapter where we're just like, imagination, the rent is due.
Right.
And it's like, well, we're coming back home here with this conversation to imagination.
Exactly. And so I had an interesting conversation yesterday with two friends, and they were they're coaches as well. And they were talking about a client they had who lost access to her third eye, and they found that out because she couldn't visualize anything. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that's it. Like, we lose access to our visualization when we feel stifled in our visualization. It's because we haven't been using it. You know, it's like just like your muscles in your body. If you aren't using your imagination muscle, it really atrophies. So then you lose your ability to visualize, but you can always get that back by practicing that. So one thing I did that was really funny was I just started like thinking, okay, I'm just going to, and this was back in the 90s, you know, I thought I'm just going to start like reading like books about Pleiadians and channeling, you know, aliens and all these things.
The fun woo stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The fun woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, just open my mind. Even if I don't believe it, I'm just going to open it up and just see where it takes me. This is fun for me. I'm just going to do it. And it's like, that's how you can start. You don't even have to like totally believe in the things that you're exposing yourself to. You could just kind of play around with it and see where that takes you, and just be open to new ideas, even though you might not agree with them. And I think that's a really great practice in itself, to start to open your mind up to other possibilities. Then you can translate that into yourself, where then whatever your potential is very open, and that is so powerful. But if we keep ourselves limited and we stay in that box of only I can, this is reality, only these things that I believe, then you're not going to go very far with that, and life's going to, in my opinion, it sucked for me, but it just, and then I find people also arguing a lot when they're the proving and defending mode, when they are stuck in the, like, this is reality, I don't know.
Well, what is
your experience with
that?
The
mind is really interesting. And I felt this a lot recently myself, where I'm having a conflict with my partner, and the mind becomes the master instead of the servant. And
exactly,
to whatever level I am aware of my mind taking over, wanting to be the master, that's the level of my maturity. And if I can infuse, like, even just a pattern interrupt with my partner or with myself, where I like make a joke to break us out of an argument, or to just pattern interrupt the mind, it's like the master succumbs back to the servant.
Yeah.
And you did this personally, because you're talking about gymnastics, where you were diagnosed with ADHD, and it wasn't pills that helped you, it was gymnastics. And then in gymnastics, you're using this faculty of imagination. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, imagination is healing then. If that's how it played out for you,
yes,
then that's how it's definitely playing out for so many of us. I mean, imagination is what allowed me to launch Wellness Force, and then to have Wellness Force die and be rebirthed as Wellness Wisdom. So before we get into the spirit, because this is like the ultimate turning point in our conversation, like this wisdom of the spirit, listening to the spirit, I want to just round out the mind. What is the healing power of imagination on a practical level? On a practical level, how did it help you heal in gymnastics? And then also, how can it help men and women heal by just getting them out of their mind and getting them into the imaginary faculty?
Yeah, it helped me focus on what I wanted to focus on. It trained my focus, honestly. As it related to gymnastics, it's like you can't really be distracted when you're in the middle of the air doing all these flips and.
Well, you can, but you're going to eat like shit.
Yeah, which I did a couple times.
Okay.
I mean, more than a couple, but yeah. So it was like, I better, and I did get injured, and I said to myself, I better get focused. Otherwise I'm just going to get more of these injuries, and this is not fun. So I started to, really get focused, because I would be like just checking out in the middle of the air sometimes and just landing wherever. And I was like, this is pretty dangerous. I can't keep doing that. So, yeah, so that's how I used it then. And then, I think the mind is a great tool. If we can acknowledge it as a tool instead of who we are, I think that's a great first step. So just realizing it's just like your body, they're very important. They're both very important for manifesting this reality. And also, it's not who you are. It's like, that goes back to that energy body. The subtle energy body is more of who you are. And your subtle energy body is using the mind and the body as tools of perception in this reality. So I guess it could be related to like a virtual reality thing, like as we see now with our goggles on, except this is the real virtual reality that we're in right here, right? With our mind and our body. We don't need to go on any virtual reality in addition to that. We're in it right now. So yeah, I believe it's a great tool for creativity, if focused in the right direction, although we have so many distractions now. So it's even more important for you to train your mind to focus on what you'd like to create. And it's going to be really powerful moving forward, because that.
And I have a mental question. for a imaginary answer. So
Okay.
on a practical level, if let's just say, so I'm a mom of 2 kids and I live in Georgia and I work 10 hours a day, and my husband's supportive sometimes, maybe sometimes he's not. And my friends aren't really into the things that I'm into. Anyways, I've created an environment for my growth, and I'm projecting and just creating this archetype of a mom who's stressed out, because that is a lot of people that are here with us. Where does she go from either a body, breath, metaphysical perspective? Like, what's something on the ground, nuts and bolts for her that she can do to really cultivate this imagination power and get out of her head?
Yeah. So what comes to mind when you say that is, first of all, I will mention that whatever you're thinking now is what your future is going to be, right? So that's going to be your future self. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't even, I'm actually I worked with nurses before, and they have no time whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what I would recommend in this example that you're giving with a woman who's working 10 hours a day, and has kids, it's about becoming present with whatever you're doing. That's your meditation practice. There's so many great apps out there that can give you like a 5-minute, 10-minute meditation that will help you become more present in the moment.
Shameless plug, Allison. The Breathe app that we have, breathwork.io, we have 7 meditations in there, and a few of them are like 5 to 7 minutes long. So you guys, breathwork.io.
That's perfect. Exactly.
Yes.
Use Josh's meditations.
Download it. I'll be with you. I'll help you.
Yes.
Continue.
And so, yeah, absolutely. And so it's not about like the hours of meditation in a cave, like in all of that thing with the sages or the gurus, demonstrate. Or it's more about like, can you integrate that presence in your daily life? That is the practice. And so the more of that you can do, the more that you, like you say, Josh, can take a deep breath, be in your body, can feel what's going on around you. What does the ground feel like underneath you? Is there wind blowing in your face? Are there people around you? What are you feeling in your body? Just start to notice like those small things. That's called being in the now, right? It's not anything huge. It is huge in a way because it's powerful, but at the same time, it's very subtle. So how can you start to tap into the mundane, the subtleness of your life, the beauty of your life? Do you see flowers sitting on the counter at work? And, oh my God, those are so beautiful. What beautiful flowers today. How's the weather? Oh, it's a beautiful day. Look, what's beautiful about it, right? So little things like that. And, maybe just saying something really kind to yourself, saying something really kind to someone else in a very authentic way, not trying to get some kind of need met, but just really authentically wanting to give that love to someone, and then receive love from other people too. So those are the things that are not talked about too much because we're inundated with all the doing stuff, right? For wellness and fitness and mindset. But yet we're not really taught how to integrate it into our daily life. So it's really about your lifestyle. How are you living like 90% of the time, right?
Yeah, there's 2 analogies that I'm feeling from you right now. One of them is, what if I have an arrow, if I have a quiver of arrows, right? And each arrow is like meditation, breath work, healthy eating, and even the 6 principles that you talk about in the book, which we'll go over in the spirit portion of the conversation. But what if I have a quiver of arrows and I just grab an arrow and I shoot it? And I never aim, I never look at the target, or maybe I'll look at the target kind of. The most important thing is to take a breath, pause, and set an intention behind why you're doing something. But I think we can all get caught up in this world where it's like people scroll through Instagram and they see like a Ed Milet motivational quote. It's like, if you want to be strong, then go to the gym. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym. And then there's no intentional space around it. There's no, the come from. The come from is so important, yet most people are taught to just shoot arrows. And I'm curious how you feel about that. Can you expand that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's so important because, we're going to be shooting arrows at everything until we really get intention behind it.
And they're important. Like, we got to shoot the arrows, but there's a wiser way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, it's like, okay, it's okay if you want to just try a bunch of different things too. It's about what you'd like to experience. And so I always say to people, just get clear on that. And that's the imagination aspect of it. Like, start to imagine all these different possibilities and what you would really like to create, how you would like to create that, how you'd like to feel, what your environment would like to look like, or you'd like your environment to look like. And all of these things are really are important, but yet we just think it just happens, instead of like, it's not that you're willing it to happen. It's just that you are, in a way, subtly setting the stage for that type of creation, because we're all creating our reality. And we know this, we've heard this, but are we really implementing it? Are we really, like you say, setting intention behind it? And it doesn't have to be anything serious. It could just be you're playing around with something. Maybe you set an intention for something and it manifests and you're like, that's okay. I'm not really crazy about that. Let me try something different. And that's totally fine too. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. We can make mistakes along the way. But initially, if you want to have like less chaos in your life, right? Then you look at your default mode of your mind. So the default mode is what you're thinking up 90% of the time. Are you criticizing yourself? Are you thinking about what's always wrong? Are you judging yourself and others? Like, what is the majority of your thought process there?
Yeah.
What thoughts are coming in? Are you worried about what's happening? Are you foreboding joy? Those kinds of things, as Brene Brown puts it. So trying to nip it in the bud, control the situation, and so that just doesn't allow for you to enjoy anything really in your life, in my opinion, if you do that. But what you can do is easily switch it over into a default mode of more optimism, of positivity, of more of what you want in your life, focusing on that. So again, we're switching our focus. And then we are, using our imagination to create that vision of what we want in our lives. And then, it all kind of comes together, but it's in a way, it's not really work. It's just you enjoying all the tools of creativity that you have access to, right?
Yes. And where it's hardware and software. I feel like that's where we are in the conversation. We're about to go into the software, which is this part 3 that you have in the book, Listening to Spirit. But I want to touch on the hardware because you just brought up something huge. And we've mentioned it on multiple podcasts. We'll link this in the show notes as a resource. You talk about this in the book as well, when we tend to the body through nasal breathing. You give some really, really great practical, like, what do I do when I wake up in the morning? What do I do to care for my body? How do I breathe properly? That's in the book. But one thing that I studied in depth for the Breathe program was this default mode network. And I love that you said that, because the prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate, the amygdala, all of these things are hardwired into the vagus nerve. So when I'm diaphragmatic breathing, I'm actually using these afferent and efferent nerve endings to switch, to pull a lever in my nervous system. It's the only lever that you and I can pull that's autonomic, and that is breath. It's voluntary, it's involuntary. So that is a huge resource that y'all must click below. Whatever you're doing, just make sure you tap wherever. And by the way, subscribe, because we're going to have a little bit extra bonuses from Allison too. I'll share that at the end. So let's do this. Let's talk about the spirit, which is the thing that was exciting me the most when I was reading your book and I was researching your work. Like, this metaphysical, this multidimensional self, exploring the subtle energy body. One thing I love the most as a jumping off point is you said, living in reverence is to respect ourselves and others by honoring ourselves. How does that relate to the subtle energy body? How did you come up with that? Really, that definition it feels like a subtle body energy definition of living in reverence.
Yeah, absolutely. I came up with that because of what I'd witnessed this past couple of years. In just seeing so many people not living in integrity and not even maybe knowing what that means. The lack of respect that people were showing each other also was a reflection in a way of how they felt about themselves. I feel like the respect that they're giving themselves. And so that's why I wrote about that, because I thought, how can we get back to our wholeness and within ourselves and have that respect for our bodies, have the respect for the energy that we bring to the table, our own unique, perspective and creative expression and all of these things. And and the only way that you really can do that is you have to start with yourself and learn how to have reverence for that. There's a sacredness to that within yourself, and then you can extend that out to everybody you come across and see the uniqueness and appreciate that within each person. Because everybody's expressing their own unique expression, and it's all beautiful, and we're all helping each other through this, so it's just really that was where the idea came for that chapter.
When you say reverence, I've heard Zach Bush talk about that. Having empathy is one thing. Having reverence is actually a little bit more sacred, because when I have empathy, there can be some blurred boundaries. But when I have reverence, there's this sacred respect for someone's process, someone's healing, someone's journey. What does reverence mean to you?
Well, setting healthy boundaries. So it's really bringing the the healthy masculine, the healthy feminine in together, right? For you to have that within you, to have that respect for your own process, your own journey. And I like that empathy, reverence, comparison, because we think empathy means just losing ourselves within another person. But that's not actually healthy. I mean, you have to have some integrity there within yourself to own your own journey there.
Empathy can lead to unhealthy codependence if not mindfully used.
Right. You want to enter, what is it? Not codependent, but interdependent relationship, I think, would be better.
Yeah. The secure attachment style, which is what we're all seeking. We all want to embody this secure attachment, but unless we, and as we're going to talk about, understand the subtle energy body and the multidimensional self, I don't see how that's possible. I mean, we're spiritual beings inhabiting this suit, and a lot of times we get caught up just in the suit. There's 3 questions you ask, and I want to probably we'll have time for you to unpack one of them, but they're profound when you talk about living in reverence. And this is in section 3 of the book. You say, are you in alignment with your personal standards? Are you changing the standards as you grow? That's huge. And do you know what you will and won't tolerate in your relationships? Pick one of those to expand for us.
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind when I think about why I wrote those was, or what inspired me to write that was really my own relationship, my own partnership with my husband. And we've been together since I was 21 and he was 22. So we met in college. And this has really, this has shown me, it's demonstrated to me in my life how much, your values when you're together are certain, you have certain values. You are in a bit of a codependent relationship when you're younger, just because you just left your parents. So you're still playing those roles out, and making your partner your parent. And so then you grow and you change, and then your values within that relationship change, maybe after you have kids or maybe during the kids stage, and then you have maybe that happens, but we're not aware of it. And then that's where we get into relationship issues, without really communicating, hey, I'm a different person now. My value, I see things differently. I have different values. And so, that's just an example. You can do that just within your own relationship with yourself and how you relate to other people in the world too. But, it's good to just go back and reflect on that, because again, when maybe values that you had when you were younger, a younger adult, were still reflective of the values you picked up with your parents, and you may still hold those, and that's totally fine. But just realize if you have actually established your own values and are living by those, or respecting, living out of reverence to those values, and not just going by other people's values or what you think someone, recommends that might be better than what you value, and just kind of leaving the values, or not even realizing that you have values, that you could be living by, and that, so it just makes life less confusing when you're really clear on that. And it's good for how you also would like to set your boundaries in other relationships. And then you can also come into common values as a couple. And those are good to recognize too. Like for me, I kind of thought about like my values are the same as my husband's values when I was younger, which is kind of silly. And then as I get older, I'm like, no, actually I have different values than he does. And he has different values. And then we have common values. So it's also good to discern between all of those, because you're an individual, your partner's an individual, and then you guys come together to create a whole nother energy together as in the relationship. But you're still you also have individual needs for yourself and perspectives, you know.
A big part.
And that's okay if you guys don't agree with all those.
That's a big
but it's
part.
good to just to be aware of that. Yeah.
I would say, yes, there's like the soul, and then there's the other soul. So there's Allison's soul, and then there's your husband's soul. And then there's like this shared union. There's a shared union that it takes its own course, and it's quite mysterious at times. You know, like there's no exact definition of what a quote relationship should look like. Even the word should is like a shaming or like a expectational word. And then when we stack onto this that you write about in the book, the multidimensional self, the subtle energy body, this is huge, because if your partner's doing his work to access and to know and to be friends and stay connected to his subtle energy body, and you're doing the same, then that's going to put like a 20-50x as far as the health and the quality of the relationship.
And you're honoring yourself. Like you honor yourself when you are discerning enough to be aware of that's going on. Like otherwise, you just kind of melt into the other person, and then you don't. You know, it's not good, because then you don't know where you stop and the other person begins. And so, what I learned is, by doing that, you do honor yourself. That's an act of reverence. And then your partner is doing the same. And then you guys now are coming together, not out of like codependency or need, but because of you want to be together.
And then of course, being in a relationship is going to make all that shit come up anyway. So any codependencies you have, or any anxious or avoidant or disorganized or ambivalent, any styles you have, they're going to come right to the surface, because the universe, God, chaos is always seeking order, high, low pressure, right? So the subtle energy body, I loved how you define this in the book. Subtle energy body reflects reality in a way that crosses all time and space. It is your intuition and higher self, your inner child and your future self. It is your multidimensional self. Share about that.
Yeah. So this is something I learned from Roseanne Grace. She's one of my good friends and teachers over the years.
I've sent a few people to her that had some really terrible experiences in psychedelic ceremonies. I've sent a few people.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah,
her way.
she's very helpful with getting those entities out.
Yes.
If people have picked that up. Yeah, so she taught me about the inner child and how powerful the inner child is, and how that translates into, your master self, your higher self, source, and it seems like, it's like a, multiple personality disorder kind of thing, but really it's just, these are all aspects of you that come through. And so for me, I initially, the key that I think, this is my opinion and what I learned from her too, is that the key to all of these other multidimensional aspects of yourself is really through the inner child. Because if you aren't acknowledging your inner child's needs first, then they will not let you through that gate to everything else. You know what I mean?
Nope.
They are the gatekeepers.
Been there.
So they want to be liberated. They want to play. They can't do that until you acknowledge what is with them, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I have a quick story.
And so that's what I found out.
I have a quick story, and then I'm going to stop talking, because I'm excited about this conversation, because it touched me, your work. Like, it took a while for us to connect, and then, you were really patient, and I finally sat down and was present with the book. And I was every time I was reading a new section that pulled me, I was just like, yes, something was clicking, and it made me reflect on what you just said, because I was in this vision quest recently. And when I got back home,
there was this part of myself where in the Vision Quest, I had a moment and I was fasted. This is like day 3. So 72 hours of no food, no distractions at all, no computers, no phones, nothing, just me and nature and my breath and water. And I look over and I start to have this dialogue with myself at 5 years old and myself at 13 years old. And we were talking, and I was literally parenting the 2 aspects of self, the young child, the little boy, and also the 13-year-old, the teenager. And I said, no matter what happens, you guys, you're coming with me. No matter what goes on in life, like no matter what challenges we have or what traumas we experience or just the things that come our way, like, I love you, you're coming with me. And it was a different lens. It was an awareness that cracked through. And I want everybody to feel this, like, yes, it might feel like at times like the inner child is demanding, the tyrant is coming out, but you need to listen. Like pain teacher's coming, right? And pain teacher, my inner child loves to teach through the pain teacher. That's his favorite tool because he needs something. So I have a choice. I can either belittle him, shame him, ignore him, suppress him, which leads to pornography, shopping, unhealthy food, things like that. Or I can go, you know what? Let me pause for a minute and listen to what he has to say. Or for you, a little girl, a human being, little human being, let's listen to what these little human beings inside of us have to say, because they're so wise. There's so much wisdom in their lessons. So I had to share that because that forever changed me when I came home from the quest this time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. God, that's a wonderful example of how you can relate to your inner child. They're just going to keep kicking you on the shin until you pay attention.
Yep. Or driving addictions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the source of most addiction.
Oh, right. And my 5-year-old was the first one who spoke to me. Also, she's very powerful, and that just got me into more, I guess, it really led to the book also. That was part of it. And it helped me put myself out there without judgment or fear of being, I guess, shamed or whatever. There was no shame around it because I'm like, oh, I'm connecting with her.
Yeah.
I'm not suppressing her anymore, because I did that, when I was about 8 years old, and I started like trying to dim myself to fit in some ways, and just lost myself. And so, because I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And of course, yes, I honor that part because it was what I needed to do to survive in the situations when I was younger. But like, I don't need that as an adult anymore. It doesn't serve me. So now this is where we connect with our inner children. And then we can, as you said, reparent ourselves through that. And the beauty of that is that when you do that, because time doesn't exist like we think it does, you can heal anything, anytime, at any moment. It's totally possible.
Yes.
So even if it happened in the past, you can still heal that within yourself. That's why we have the visualization of the inner child, who are a representation of our subconscious. And but it's easier to connect with your inner child. So we it's better for me anyway to see it that way, because I have more compassion and love for that part of myself. And then once you can connect with your inner child and liberate them, because really all they want to do is play. They don't want to be tied down with these, pain or adult responsibilities or anything like that. They want to play. Yeah. So if you can think about it real simply like that, and doing it simply like you did it with the words that you chose, that was beautiful. Really, that opens the gates up to all of your aspects of your higher self and your connection with Source. But you have to get through that's why that inner child work is so important. And it's really not work. It's just letting them play. And people sometimes get a little scared of that because they don't want to revisit the pain, which is totally understandable. But you don't necessarily have to revisit the pain. It's just, in my opinion, more about liberating your children.
There's a lot of practices you talk about in the book too. We don't have time to go into this, and I'll link an episode with Mark Wolin and also an episode with Dr. Kyra Bobinet where we talk about trauma
to specific ways to process that. But in the book, there's also some tools that you give for that. I can't let you go unless we talk about 3, 4, and 5D. Like, we really get to talk about this because in your work, I love that you say that it's the intuition and the higher self. And then it's also the inner child and the future self. I can't help but think inner child's imagination creates the future self. Is that true?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
That's it.
So I think about this 3D, and you describe this, I'm paraphrasing, there's a deeper definition in the book. 3D, you learn about the physical body, the way to move and think and eat and do our finances. It's like the foundation of our life.
Yeah.
We're on a meat suit and a rock in the middle of outer space, and we're just like, what's going on? 4D, you learn in the realm of embodiment how to bring information into your body and integrate it through practice. You learn how to feel and connect with changes in your body, but on an emotional level, energy and motion. And then lastly, 5D, this is the strength of awareness to the subtle energy body and connect it to your physical body. And you say 5D wellness is about bringing the practice of intention into your experience. Only you must experience other levels first. Talk about these levels, and please bring in spiritual bypassing, where people try to jump from the 3, skip the 4, and go right to the 5, or maybe not even go in the 3 and just go right to the 5.
Yeah. So what spiritual bypassing is really is that people want to skip over the steps of grounding themselves in their body and getting, tending to their body and creating that health, that foundational health. And then also tending to the emotions and navigating that. They just want to skip over and into the 5D, which is impossible. And also, if you're not acknowledging the inner children, like we talked about too, that's another way of spiritual bypassing.
Yes.
You're not going to get very far. Let's just put it that way. Just because of what I described earlier.
It might seem alluring in the beginning, though. It's like, oh, it's a shortcut. Anytime I've taken a spiritual shortcut, it's a long cut.
Yeah, and I mean, you would know more about this than I would, but maybe some of the plant medicines could be maybe a shortcut too for people.
It's a perceived shortcut, but actually it's a super long cut. It's like on Google Maps where there's there's the fastest, and then there's like the 5th one down with all the tolls. That can be plant medicine for some people.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so it opens the door up to more exploration, but
there's more paths, but like look out because you might choose the wrong one. Well, it might be it'll be the perfect one for you, but anyways, that's a whole other podcast.
Well, I like just doing it so I'm a very physical person and I like to do things practically, but I also love all the woo-woo too. So it's like a combo of that. But the 3D is like you said, like just really grounding yourself with the right foods, the right movement. Those are things we're learning in the 3D world. How to, have good finances, good relationships, all those basic things that everybody wants to sell you, right? Those are the things that people want to know about. How do we do this? Beyond that, once you master those things, you get into the 4D where things are a little bit more complex, more intellectualized. There's like all these crazy concepts. This could be where a lot of the conspiracy theories live, and as well as how we navigate our emotional body and learning how to create emotional intelligence and those kinds of things, and really asking ourselves those deeper questions and getting deeper into those aspects of the 3D. And then the 5D, there's a lot more beyond the 5D, but the 5D is what I used as an example because those are the higher dimensions that we're heading into, is more of ease and just it's a more easy vibration. It's doing things. You're manifesting. You're really connecting with your subtle energy body. This is where your energy body is more on board, and you're more aware of it than you were in the 3D and the 4D, and you're seeing things manifest very quickly because of that. But you have to learn all the other stuff first. You have to learn how to train your mind. You have to learn how to focus. You have to learn how to get present with yourself. Like that presence, the practice of presence and prioritizing that in your life is so important for the 5D, because if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be able to focus, what you want to create here. So the 5D is more of like, what do you want? What do you truly want? And let's just make it happen. It's it's bringing in more, I guess, of the feminine aspect, the yin, that we haven't tapped into as much because we've been into a more physical reality. But the 5D is embodies that being much more than doing. So, for example, in the past, we've been creating a lot through doing. And, if you look at all the marketing, it's all about hustling and doing and striving, and you got to do more.
A lot of marketing promises the shortcut, less pain.
And I noticed
less
that
time.
lately. It's like, why do we have to? First of all, I understand efficiency, but do we have to make everything in our life fast and efficient? Because like sometimes I just want to enjoy the moment, Maybe I need to take a little more time with something to.
It's something we have to look out for, Allison, you and I together, and all of us here in this space, on your podcast, on my podcast, in our wellness world. Be wary of shortcuts that are planted in the same garden with universal truth. Because you could put a shortcut seed in the garden, it might grow, but you're not really going to harvest any fruit from it. You're not really going to harvest any vegetables from it, but it looks and feels, and it might seem like it's a universal truth seed, but universal truth is going to be like, well, master 3D, master 4D, then start to receive the feminine wisdom from the 5D. And I think a lot of content on YouTube and just a lot of content out there in general, it can be very like even 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 100D. I don't know how many Ds there are.
many of them.
Okay,
it's infinite.
There's a bunch of Ds. So how do you decipher when you're consuming information from teachers, from masters, from guides, and even in the way you wrote your book, how to look out for a wolf in sheep's clothing or a universal seed right next to a seed of shortcut?
Yeah, a high level of discernment is needed right now, especially as it relates to that. And I'll just mention one more thing about 5D. It's also about how you receive. So being open, receiving, and even men, like they're being asked to be able to do that now too. I mean, everybody is. So, and just being, like, how are you being right now? Not what you're doing, how are you being? But anyway, and so discernment between, this is the thing. Okay. So many people, this is also another reason why I wrote the book, is because I felt like, wow, okay, I'm learning how to read energy. I think I've always known how to do this, but I suppressed it for a long time and then I forgot how to do it. Now I'm remembering again as an adult. But we can all read energy. We're all doing it without even really noticing, because we're like, oh, this feels walk into a room like, what a weird feeling, this feels, not right. I'm going to leave. Or, oh, this is a great feeling. What's going on here? This is a great vibe, so you can feel energy, but many times we go by what we're seeing instead of what we're actually picking up on energetically. So the discernment factor is to learn how to read energy, and that's by you prioritizing yourself, being still with yourself, learning how you receive information. How do you receive information? How do you read energy with people? It's all different. How do you feel energy in your own body? And that's why I put that in the book, because that's the first step, is to learn how you feel energy in your body, and then you can start reading the energy that you pick up on in other people. And if it feels, if you watch somebody marketing something to you and it feels like you're feeling really needy and like, oh God, I got to have this or else I'm not going to be like a whole person without it, or I need this to make my dreams come true or whatever, then there might be something there that you want to hesitate with, because unless it's something that you're like, oh man, this would be really fun. I think I want to have this experience. That might be a better way to go about it. And that's how I go about it now. Is it really fun, or is it something I feel like I really need? And it's like, triggering me to like a scarcity mentality kind of thing, because that's still being used heavily in marketing for the fitness, the business industry, entrepreneur industry, everything. Like they're still using this scarcity mentality instead of abundance mentality for, hey, would you like more joy in your life? Would you like more fun in your life? Would you like more abundance? Instead they're saying, oh, you don't have this, so we're going to give it to you, so you're going to pay it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference, I think, and just picking up on those energies and knowing there is a difference between that kind of marketing, the scarcity mentality marketing, and the abundance mentality marketing, which I think I'm moving more towards the abundance mentality marketing myself with my own products, because I just feel like that feels better to me. And the other kind just felt kind of gross. And so nothing against people who want to do that. That's totally cool. And I'm sure it's going to serve people if they go for that, in some way or another, but it's just not for me. And so it's discerning that for yourself, like what feels better for you, and then go with it.
Yeah. Don't
just go with something because everybody else is doing it and you think that's the only way to do it or that's the right way. You can really go about it any way you want. That's the key here. And so the 5D is actually creating a new reality that hasn't been created. We're getting rid of old programs that we've been going by forever, and we're actually creating new programs. And that's the point of it. Like, there's no plan. So you're creating it right now. So that's
there's got to be a check-in.
Part.
There's got to be a check-in with the inner child, because the inner child and the future self, well, the 5D is the future self. So if we're there, let's do, and I know you didn't call it work. I feel like it can be work sometimes, but the more that I do it, the less it feels like work, inner child work. So let's merge these two. Like, let's merge this like old way of being where, and I was tapping my heart when you were speaking, because I was like, oh, I know how it feels when I'm being marketed to, and when I feel something that pulls my heart versus pushes my mind. If I feel pushed by my mind from scarcity, like, oh yeah, if I get that thing, then it'll heal me. That's the wrong come from. But if I'm feeling pulled from my heart by the child and the future self, really 5D, then it just feels different in my subtle energy body, which you write about in the book. We covered so much ground. I'm sure we missed a few things. Is there something you haven't shared on a podcast, or is there something that your heart or your soul wants to share that maybe we missed on this episode?
Well, I would like to just acknowledge that what you just shared, and that's a beautiful example of it. And just start to listen to how or feel your body when you hear things like that. And where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel pulled? Do you feel pushed? Those are real simple ways to connect with that. That's amazing. I love that. And that's a similar way that I do it too. And everybody's unique in that way. But I think this podcast, I feel like I talked about a lot of things I haven't before. It was very unique. So thank you so much, Josh, for having me on. This has been amazing.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be great. And whenever I'm getting ready for someone, because I love what I do, so I'm always preparing. And I'll do it in little packets. Like, I'll prepare one day, and usually the morning of, I'll really dig into someone's work. And I was sitting on the bike, on the Rogue bike, and it's the one that pulls the hands. You're supposed to do it with your hands and legs, but I had your book and I was doing it with just my legs, and so I was practicing my breath work and I was connecting. And right when I read that part about child and future self, something clicked, where I was like, oh, that's pretty much everything. That's pretty much everything as far as a guidepost on what to do. Because I think from my mind, an entrepreneur's mind, and as we say goodbye, I'd love to know what you feel about this. When we come from the stories we come from our trauma, from our pain, from all these things, what does the compass look like for you now personally to navigate the road ahead?
Yeah, so that's I'm still learning, because a lot of what I'm doing now is so different than what I used to do. I'm just approaching it with childlike curiosity, and I'm sticking with that energy so that I can keep the magic in it. So I think a lot of times in the past, it's become a little bit less enjoyable when I don't have that curiosity and that magic in the process, and so I have to keep bringing myself back to that, and when things come up along the way, I get a little bit disappointed at times with things, and maybe because I had high expectations, and I'm like, oh, you know what? But then I remind myself of everything I've done, and I acknowledge my wins, and like, wow, okay, so I'm doing great, and just keep staying open to what could become, because there's always that potential there, and just don't give up on yourself, and truly, just stay open to all of these amazing things that can happen in our life. Because, we can get stuck in these limited places where we're like, oh my God, that didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, but maybe there's a better way it's going to happen and it's going to unfold for you, the one that you've not even expected, but you have to stay open to that possibility. So that's what I always remind myself of is let's keep staying open, because that's where the magic happens, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that. What is something that you let die this year, and what birthed in its place?
I let so much of my identity die this year. Who I thought I was, what I thought I was here to do. And yeah, I'm just, I'm now open that I'm always changing. I'm always evolving. I'm never the same person, even the next day or hour, so it's like, that's okay. Like, I'm just enjoying it, the experience I'm having now. So, and I want, again, keep reminding myself of that, because sometimes I forget. I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm here to have fun and have the experience I'd like to have. So, yeah, so I think it's just like the identities, because it limits us so much when we attach to those, even though they can ground us when we're younger, and it can be very good for development. At some point, if you're depending too much on those identities, I think it can also stifle your growth. So,
amen. No doubt on that. As we say goodbye, the pentagon that I always discuss, and you talk about these 6 foundations of health in your book. FinallyThrivingBook.com is the website. Finally Thriving Program, if you want to work with Allison, if you've been lighting up to some of the things that she's been saying, it's Finally Thriving Program. So we'll have that linked in the notes. But I describe the Pentagon as what I learned from Paul, and also my own journeys with finances, and it's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial. Within that pentagon, or however you want to describe the building blocks of your life, in the center of that, there's Allison's well-being. There's her thriving. What does that mean to you? How do you define wellness? How do you define well-being?
Fundamentally, I want to feel good in my body. I just really want to feel comfortable, feel light, feel energetic. I want to do the things I love to do physically. And not be limited in that way. Although, I also have some limitations, so I appreciate that, and I respect those limitations, and then I also see the potential within those limitations. So yeah, and then the thriving aspect for me is being able to unapologetically express myself however I want to express it, and just honor that within me, and make mistakes gracefully and have fun doing what I love to do, just not take myself so seriously, I think is the biggest lesson here, is the biggest thing. So that would be thriving for me,
Beautiful. Thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you so much. And I love the book. Everybody go out and pick up a copy of Finally Thriving. It's on the Amazon. It's everywhere else too. Allison, thank you for being here with us on Wellness Wisdom.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, you guys, until Allison and I see you again, we're both wishing you so much love and so much wellness. We'll talk to you soon. If you loved that episode, you'll love the episodes linked right here on this page. Also, if you have any thoughts, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and also get notified when new episodes come out delivered right to you.